one podcast listener is worth 1,000 YouTube watchers or 10,000 blog readers or probably 1 million social media followers in terms of how much they're likely to take action. Podcasting is usually smaller numbers, but much higher engagement. So you can grow your 1,000 true fans with podcasting so much easier than any other medium. It's such a good excuse to reach out and just get an hour of somebody's time. What other way can you just email somebody and say, can I just speak to you and pick your brains for an hour? Some of the best podcasts out there are somebody who's a complete beginner and therefore the listener utterly identifies with this person because they're the same and they're just talking about their journey.
I've got a million questions for you today on what you do, how you founded your business, and then how others can actually start up a podcast and run it successfully. But before we jump fully in headlong here, give us a quick origin story. How did you get to where you are owning this business? I think you said you have over 2,000 customers. You have a SaaS product now, kind of like a Squadcast, what we're recording on now. How'd you get into it? I got a million questions, but tell me how you got into it.
Yeah, the background is I started in education. So I was a teacher at a university in Scotland, so in Edinburgh. And my role was a technology enhanced learning lecturer. So that just means how to teach with tech, how to get some gear and do better teaching with that. And one of the new techs that came along back when I was teaching that back in about 2006, 2007 was podcasting. So my boss just told me to go and have a look into this new technique. And I just promptly fell in love with the medium, to be honest. I just loved and still do the kind of personality that comes through it, the in-depth content, the conversations, the chemistry, the fact that it's so personal. It's just having a conversation like we are just now, isn't it? And so I just started writing about it. While I was working at the uni, I just started writing what are the best microphones, what are the best mixers, how to start a podcast, how to monetize a podcast. And luckily enough, either right place, right time, maybe a tiny bit of skill, those articles started doing quite well. And we grew basically the biggest podcasting resource on the web through the 2010s. So in sort of mid-2010s, we had about 2 million people a year having a look at our blog, going through our courses, our education. We did production at that time as well. And so it kind of all grew up through that. And then, like you said, that software came along just after that in about 2017 because we were always getting questions, like you said, people just want to know how to start a podcast. And one of the biggest ones was, how do I make editing easier? How do I make editing simpler? And so we set out to build a tool that actually made that whole process much easier. So Alitu started as just a podcast editing platform, automated loads of it. So from the audio cleanup to adding your music and your transitions, we built it all around that in the early days. Then we built in call recording after that too, and then podcast hosting as well. So these days, we've ended up with a company where basically I teach people how to podcast through our free content. We have courses and coaching through our membership. And then we've got the software on the side as well to complement that and actually help them get it done. So that's kind of the potted history of how we got to where we are now.
Isn't it fascinating how I remember it was probably my first iPhone I had back in the early 2000s. Must have been around when you said 05, 06. Yeah. And I remember seeing in the Apple podcast app. And I remember for years thinking to myself, what the heck is this? I never used it. I never really dove into it. But I'm like, I have no idea what a podcast is. And that app just sat dormant on my phone for years until about, I feel like in the last 5 years, podcasting has just blown up. Now, I'm sure it obviously was large enough for a while earlier, 10 years ago, but it's just crazy how it's skyrocketed, right? Like the medium has just absolutely blown up in the past 5 years.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because it's never had that same hockey stick growth that you've seen in some other platforms, like a platform that comes out of nowhere and suddenly everyone's got it. Mm-hmm. Podcasting is one of these slow and steady growers. If you look at the stats, it's grown about, 2 to 3% listenership every single year. So maybe I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it's roughly like 17, 18% of people listen to a podcast on a regular basis, maybe 10 years ago, and it's gone up by 2 or 3% every single year. So we're in the region of like weekly listening is above 50% now. So 1 in 2 people listen on a regular basis. But you're right, it's like just slow, steady growth. Do you remember when Serial was one of the kind of big breakout ones? Do you remember that podcast at all?
Yeah.
And it was kind of the first one that really went mainstream. And it coincided with, like you said, that podcast app becoming default on iPhones as well. Those two things together actually made a huge difference that was like the one kind of blip where it did jump a little bit more than usual.
Yeah. And now you have the top podcasts in the world with millions and millions of downloads, and it's wild. Now it's like an alternative form. I feel like it's maybe hasn't taken over radio, but maybe it has. It's awfully close if it hasn't, but Just an awesome medium to be in. So you got your start in this, kind of at the cusp of podcasting coming aboard or just becoming a thing. So you're kind of, and I guess you're an old timer when it comes to knowing everything about podcasting. So what a treat to have you on today. All right. So what were your first steps? I know you said you were in university and you were teaching about it, learning about it. You started developing all this content about it. Where did you go from when you said you had one of the top, content website and blog, I suppose, for podcasting? How did you then shift that into your own business? When was that and how did you do that?
Yeah, there was 2 or 3 years. So from about I launched the website in 2010 and through 11, 12, maybe 13, so about 3 years worth. It just grew very slowly and steadily. And I remember getting my first Amazon check. That was how we monetized in the early days, like through affiliate revenue. Is that something you've any experience with, like getting your wee Amazon check through for promoting? Yeah. So that was the first thing, like that $50 check that came through maybe about 2012 or so. And that grew into the thousands over the next couple of years. So it was about 2014 when I was looking at getting out of my job at the university. And by that point, the Amazon money had got to about 4,000 or 5,000 a month. And we'd started to grow affiliate revenue around some of the platforms as well. So directly with the hosting platforms, particularly, and some of the other creation platforms as well. So we were making probably about 5,000 or 6,000 a month by that point. And that felt like the point to me where I could, jump out and do it full time. And I actually got lucky enough that I got accepted onto a local development program, almost like an accelerator, where they gave me enough for the year to basically have my own salary. And then I could put that money towards taking somebody else on. So that was 2015 when I really transitioned from it being a hobby into, it was suddenly me and another guy that I took on at the time as our team, essentially.
Wow. Okay. So you're starting to building a team. Was the business still just the content or was it shifting into starting a podcast, teaching people? What was the order of operations?
Yeah, there was 2 things that came on from there. First was, it was Matthew. So Matthew McLean was my first part of my team, and he was a producer. So he and I we thought the first thing we would do is start working for other people, essentially take on clients and start producing people's podcasts. And we did that over a couple of years. So that was kind of our first proper go at turning it into a real, well, I mean, it was already a real business, I suppose, technically, but, something that we could scale from there. Do you know what, though? We hated it. We hated running an agency. I love teaching and I love actually producing our own podcasts, but neither of us in the end. We loved working with clients, actually. Like, the clients were not the problem at all. It was more that we both really enjoyed, like, creating content so much that having to spend that time, like most of our week, doing client work. So doing stuff for these other people, as great as they were and as great as their podcasts were, it just felt so constraining. And so after a couple of years, by about mid-2016, we'd binned that again, actually, and gone back to just concentrating on growing the sponsorship revenue, the affiliate revenue. And then that's actually when our kind of education stuff came in at that point, actually try to create courses, yeah.
Wow, okay. So let's talk about the transition away from the agency and away from client work and turning it more into teaching and courses. What was that transition like?
It was gradual for sure. And it wasn't very smooth either. The first iteration of it was we ramped down from about 7 or 8 clients down to, I think we kept on 2 at the time. So we still had a wee bit of extra revenue from that. We still had some people to learn from as well. Because that was one of the great things about actually running a small scale agency was, I don't know if you've had this from many of your other guests who do sort of similar things, but like we learned so much from the people we worked with. Is that like a common thread you find?
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
There's just so much, like the questions they ask, the things they go through, the experiments they try, all of that stuff, like that totally powered our content. So it was great to keep 2 people doing that. So we kept on those 2 clients, but we thought we'd just turn that expertise essentially into education. The first iteration of it though was a pretty dismal failure because we made the classic mistake of trying to widen out straight away. So I didn't want it to be constrained just to podcasting, because podcasting doesn't necessarily just stand alone anyway. Like most people that podcast create a blog, create a video channel, all those different kinds of things. So I made it more around how to grow a fan base. So we called it fan fission, as in like the fission of an atom, to try and have a chain reaction around growing fans. I thought this was a really smart name at the time, but obviously, as I know now, and as I'm sure you're going through your head right now, it just doesn't say what it is. It's not close enough tied to podcasting. It just didn't speak to our audience well enough. So that whole thing flopped. I ended up creating 5, 6, 7 different courses, which I still think were really good quality courses even back then. We created a whole environment for it, but it was just the messaging. It was the targeting was just way off. So that thing flopped entirely.
Well, at that point in time, did you have an audience or like an email list or people to sell the course to or to get market feedback from? Or was it, hey, we've got this course and the doors are open, and then no one showed up?
We did, yes. So by that point, we'd had about 6 years of growing an audience. And this was well after we'd kind of hit that kind of 2 million a year point or so for readers. So we had an email list of maybe 30, 40,000 people at the time. So, wow. I mean, it's a good amount of people to put it out to. And we had the podcast running. We were sort of a little niche podcast, but in our area, we had about 2,000 or so an episode listening to it, which is like really good for the podcasting space. And so we had a good audience, but it was literally, I'm sure, and I kind of did a lot of sort of research back on it, a bit of a deep dive into what happened at the time. And it just didn't connect with people. They were like, I'm growing a podcast. I don't know what you're talking about, like fans and all this kind of stuff. Like, I just want to grow my podcast audience. And I translate that to, the ideal thing is kind of going back to, Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans concept. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was like, that was kind of where it came from for me. That's core podcasting, is that podcasting is usually smaller numbers, but much higher engagement. So you can grow your 1,000 true fans with podcasting so much easier than any other medium. So that was why fans resonated with me. But it was just way off.
Yeah. Okay. So you learned your lesson from the first iteration. What came immediately after?
Well, we, funnily enough, retargeted it just to be the Podcast Academy. So it was just does what it says in the tin directly. I just spent about 2-3 months basically kind of going back to the drawing board, bringing it back solely to podcasting, core into podcasting alone, and relaunched it, and actually just did really well at that point. So started growing by 50 or 100 members a month sort of thing. And I think we peaked out at were we up to about 1,000 members or so at one point? Something in that region anyway. But yeah, it went really well from that point. And that was really good actually. For the next couple of years, we ran that membership and really enjoyed it. Great fun working with that many really engaged podcasters, people really enthusiastic about their topics, helping them figure out like how to nail down what their topic is, how to make it a success, all of that stuff. Yeah. So that was a really good couple of years following on from that.
Wow. Was that a high ticket type of course? Was it low ticket or kind of mid tier? How did you guys decide to price it?
We were in we honestly just kind of followed a lot of the other membership coaching type pricing around the time, which was I think about the $39, $49 a month kind of range. So I think we were I think we started at 29 and we ended at about 49. So yeah, that kind of range.
Okay. And then was this an active group that you were actively coaching on different calls, and there was like a platform, whether it was a Facebook group or whatever you used, where people can ask questions? How was it structured? We were, and we still are actually these days. I think the core of community building and education delivery hasn't changed a whole lot. It was really, we had our courses in there. We had a load of resources which were more based around action, so checklists and templates and stuff to save time. And then we had a discussion forum, essentially. It was basically all asynchronous. So people would be posting their questions. We were in there answering a couple of times a day. And we would have a live call maybe once a month. Do you know one thing we tried actually, which didn't work at all? I think people saw value in it when they saw it on the landing page, but then the timings just didn't work, was like weekly Q&As. So we ran live weekly Q&As for a good couple of years, tried a bunch of different methods from just text-based chat, like in Discord or whatever it might be, to live on the call ones. And they were just very bad. Like even with a good number of members that we had, people just didn't turn up for them. I think they just weren't focused and specific enough. It was just turn up and ask any question. And people were just like, I could do, but I've got other things to do. And so they just didn't at the time. So it was a funny one, that. But we had the live sessions with guests, worked quite nicely though. Okay. So let's transition to where you guys are today. And then obviously we're going to talk about Alitu. I guess, how did the business keep growing from that point when you started finding success with education and courses? And then where is it at today?
Yeah, so we started Alitu in 2017, or I started building it in 2017 based off a lot of feedback and work with that community, actually. It was a lot around all of the coaching we were doing with them around editing and production, and just thinking, like, we're teaching people. You'll know this as well as I, Brien. Like, when you get into podcasting, you basically end up becoming an audio engineer, or you feel like you should. You need to learn EQ and compression and all this nonsense. These days, it's so much easier. That was back in 2017, 18. But these days, there's loads of tools that does your audio cleanup for you, can do a lot of the making for you. But that was us, that kind of, we were the first iteration of that, essentially, with Alitu. And it was, the audio cleanup was the big one. So take away all of that bother, and then pulling in your music, transitions, all that kind of stuff. So we built that iteration of it in the first place and launched that in 2018. And it went okay in the early days. Would you consider, I don't know, we got 50 people on the sign up. I don't know if that's considered a success or not, but it felt quite good to me. So that's where it started, certainly. That was the kind of first month. And then from there, we just started developing it and building it from there.
How did you build it? Did you hire a team of developers? Did it take a lot of startup capital? What, like, types of investments? How did you get it off the ground?
Yeah, so we bootstrapped it entirely. The podcast host as a business, like the website, the podcast host was making probably, I think it was in the region of $10,000 to $15,000 a month at that time through affiliate and sponsorship. So that was paying my salary, Matthew's salary, and that was it at the time. That was all we had as a team. And so we had a wee bit of surplus there to take on a young developer. So first member of our engineering team was a guy called Brien Gearin, who's still with us now. He's now our CTO 8 years later. And he basically took these harebrained designs that I had and just messed around with them for nearly a year. Like, it took quite a long time to bring together that first MVP, because we were really just experimenting, playing around with the tech. And we had working parts early on, but just making it do what we really wanted it to do, making it easy, making it actually be consistent in terms of quality and output was tricky. So that was like the job of mid 2017 to mid 2018 was just really me and Brien messing around with this product, this software product, and Matthew taking care of a lot of the content in the background, and me contributing a bit to that as well.
Wow. Okay. So when you first launched it, you had 50 people on it. What was the experience like from getting your first iteration out there, getting your first paying customers on there? How has it changed in the years since?
Oh, a whole lot. We grew through COVID time. So 18, 19 was slow. So we were trying to get word out there. Even with, this is something I found actually, I thought that because we had this big audience that was asking for this product, I thought they were going to flock to it. But because it was very early in the days of having an app like that, people were so used to using just software on their computer. So downloading Audacity or Adobe Premiere or Adobe Audition or whatever, that editing a podcast in a web browser was quite alien to folk at the time, weirdly. It's totally normal now. It's like the way that most people do it nowadays, but it was quite unusual at that point. So that first year was very slow. And we had to use a lot of our audience trust, like that trust we'd built with that audience to try and convert people into it. We grew by about 50 or so people a month through that first year. So I think we ended the year by about 500 or so people. And then in the second year, I think we about doubled that. We kind of doubled it every year for the first 3 years or so in terms of user numbers, which is great, but it's still not, it's still with maybe 1,500 users, which was a decent revenue at the time, to be fair. But then but that kind of bled into the COVID time when actually podcasting completely took off. So into 2021, we ended up at about 2,500 or so users like we have now. So we've actually been kind of relatively steady since then, since about 2022, because the podcasting market had quite a big pullback after COVID. A lot of people started podcasts during that time that probably would have put them off for the next couple of years. So it was almost like you brought forward 2 or 3 years worth of podcasts into 1 year. But so I mean, it was kind of crazy. Those 2 or 3 years, we grew really fast. We grew the team. We took on another 2 or 3 developers. We took on a support team. We've now got 3 support team members. We took on a UX guy as well to make it look better, to make it feel better, to make it work better. And Who else? We have a growth person as well. We actually had a growth team of 3 people back in about 2021, really taking advantage of that acceleration we had as well. So we were up to about 19 people, I think, at the time.
Wow. Okay. So what is pricing like to use Alitu, and how did you guys arrive at your pricing, whether it was at the beginning or even as you have it priced right now?
Yeah, we started out, I always felt I wanted to go for the more premium end of podcasting, but not outrageously. So our first price was 28, essentially, in a world where podcast hosting and other podcast tools were either free, Audacity was free, or, tools were often like $10 or $12, something like that. So 28 was a bit of a push at the time, but I was building it all around the fact that it saved you so much time. It helped you put everything all together for you. There was it was like having another team member, and it's still kind of how we pitch it, really. And so we were at 28 for the first 2 or 3 years. We rose to 32 in about 2020, 2021. And nowadays we're at 38. So it's $38 a month. But throughout that time, of course, we added like all the other tools. So we've got call recording in now. We've got the audio cleanup. We've got the audio editing. We've got podcast hosting. So nowadays, actually, even though the price is higher than it was in the early days, it's probably cheaper value-wise because it brings together 3 different tools.
Is it a single tier, or do you have multiple tiers for people to choose from?
Yeah, we just have 1 tier. So the philosophy,
Simple.
Yeah, the philosophy of the company has always been simplification, minimalism, making it as simple as possible to put together this content, something that could be quite a technical process, and making it just like drop dead easy. And so it always felt kind of anathema to me almost to bring in more pricing tiers and make people choose. And in Alitu, I try not to make people ever have to make choices. We often make choices for people with it, actually, to make it easier. So we have less control. Like, people have less control in Alitu over their audio, over their settings, all that kind of stuff than elsewhere. But it's because we know podcasting, and it's, if you trust us, come to us, we'll make a lot of these decisions for you. You won't have to worry about any of it, and it'll just get done in a good way. And that was always my philosophy, and it still is. That's kind of how we stand out. We don't just add new settings. We don't just add new features. We concentrate on just making it drop dead simple. And so, yeah, the pricing reflected that. Just like 1 choice, come in, enjoy it, trust us, and we'll take care of you.
Right. Well, and I like that you mentioned that too many choices. I mean, it's like if you overwhelm a shopper, a confused shopper becomes a non-buyer because they have too many options. It's great to have options. I love having choices, but sometimes I just want the expert to tell me this is how you should do it. We know how this works. We've done it a bajillion times. Here's 1 choice. Mm-hmm. Say yes or no.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Just keep it simple. I love that. So how do you guys... well, maybe I should let's give everyone just an overview of everything that Alitu can do. Is this a product that you would compare to like a Squadcast or a Riverside, or does it do something a little different? Is this something where, hey, I'm Brien, I want to start a podcast, you start using Alitu and I can literally do everything myself? Or is it that simple, or is there a little bit of difference involved?
Yeah, no, that's exactly the idea. Yeah, if you're an individual, you want to start a podcast, you want to not worry about the technical side of it, you can do it all yourself. So yeah, it includes the call recording. So it does everything Squadcast does. It includes the editing as well. So you can go in there, you can edit out your mistakes, you can take away silences, it's got AI editing as well. So it can take out your ums and ahs, clean up your audio, text-based editing. So you can like highlight sentences and skim through the text and actually edit it from the transcript, that kind of thing. And then it's got the hosting too. So the publishing side of things is all built in too. So yeah, that and the audio cleanup. So yeah, if you're thinking about competitors, you've got Squadcast is now owned by Descript, of course. So Descript is another audio editor. Squadcast is their call recorder. So they're similar. They don't have the hosting side of things and less of the audio cleanup. And then you've got Riverside. Riverside's a good call recorder as well that's got some editing built in, but not necessarily all of the episode building. So we stand out by taking care of the whole episode from start to finish. You can piece together all the segments. You can bring in adverts. You can bring in your intro, your outro, all those kind of things, and bring that all together and then put it out there. And the fact that it's, just like the most streamlined process we can make for a podcast.
Wow. Okay. I love that. I guess, in terms of your marketing and your user base growth, how do you guys market yourselves, and what are your goals each year for growth on the platform?
Yeah. Our primary marketing channel is still content. like going on 15 years now. So we still put out 2 or 3 blog posts a month writing about podcasting, writing about the industry. We run a newsletter. So we still have tens of thousands of people on our newsletter who we do a lot of kind of segmenting, and we do a lot of automated sequences and things like that. So people sign up via our website or via our YouTube channel or our podcast, and they get welcomed into, either our startup sequence, taking them through how to start a show, or our growth sequence, taking them through like a set of steps to actually grow that audience. So email's a big one for us. More recently, I've been doing a lot more video, to be fair. So getting on YouTube and trying to expand our organic reach through a lot more video work. So that kind of ties into the podcasting world these days, because video is such a bigger thing now for podcasters. But yeah, that's the kind of main channels just now.
Okay. So what do you say to those who are wanting to start a podcast? What's the best advice that you give to someone who is ready to start a podcast? What should they be thinking about? Or maybe what is it that they're not thinking about that they should be considering before starting a podcast?
The biggest thing, I mean, you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, don't you? I tend to try and make people think of a podcast as a business, essentially, right from the start. And there's 2 parts to that, I suppose. One is the purpose, like what is the point of this? Most likely the listeners to your show, Brien, are thinking of it as maybe it's an earning opportunity. Maybe you can earn some money out of it, or maybe it's to grow a business. Often it is. It's a marketing tool to grow an existing business, something like that. So really thinking through how the podcast fits into that marketing actually makes a big difference. And podcasting is actually a really good base for content marketing. If you produce a podcast on a weekly basis, it can serve as a really excellent foundation for everything else. So you can take that transcript and you can really easily set up a script for a more concise YouTube video. You can really easily turn that into a newsletter, into LinkedIn posts, all of that kind of stuff. Like, it was easy enough to do that from the transcript in the olden days, but nowadays it's even easier, obviously, because you can AI repurpose it in many ways and then edit it to your own voice. So audio in that way is just such a good way to get your ideas out there onto a microphone and then be able to take that and then repurpose it all around the world. So that's quite a good side of it in the first place.
Podcasting serves so many different purposes that I think a lot of people wouldn't have even considered or known about. Mm-hmm. One of them, for me, one of the big unlocks was being a host of a podcast. I get to meet so many people that I wouldn't have otherwise gotten to meet. So many, in our case here, awesome entrepreneurs. We're doing awesome entrepreneur things. But I've had collaborations that I've built from people that have come onto the podcast. And I know a lot of people who they start a podcast as like you said, a marketing medium for them, but as an opportunity to have a platform to offer to people who they could possibly assist in some way, or, there could be a client relationship in the future, or just literally building their network by sharing their platform. And then whatever their business may be, if they're talking to people who could use their service, or they talk to people who know a lot of people who need their service, now it's a medium to grow your business. So the podcast isn't the end all be all. It's the tool. It's the way to build your network. You guys, have you seen that be the case for a lot of your podcasters, and maybe yourself included?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good excuse to reach out and just get an hour of somebody's time. What other way can you just email somebody and say, can I just speak to you and pick your brains for an hour? And usually they'd say, no, you can pay for that. Thank you very much. But as soon as it's on a podcast, then suddenly it's fine. But it's such a good basis for setting up those collaborations. It's such an easy first step for saying, do you know what, we cover a similar audience. Do you fancy doing some work together? Like, I'm sure I can get in front of your audience. I can put you in front of ours. And a podcast, that conversation, such a good way to do it. And equally, like you're suggesting there, it builds that relationship, doesn't it? Because it's a proper conversation. It's actually a chat where you're learning a bit more about each other. Do you do much in the way, Brien, of kind of more outside of interview collaborations? Like, there's some really interesting ways, like doing co-hosted episodes, for example, or feed drops, that kind of stuff. Have you experimented much with that?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, there's so many opportunities. It's crazy. Tell me more about those. How do you guys operate with those?
So like the traditional interview is a great way to go about it, for sure. But actually Co-hosted episodes create something a bit more unique that you can actually use in different ways. So if you say to somebody, right, I'm not going to get you on and interview you. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to pick a topic and we're going to formulate a plan together to cover this topic in real depth. We're both going to give our own opinions. We're both going to discuss it back and forth. We'll ask each other a few questions. We'll have a proper conversation rather than just almost a one-way interview type approach. And often you can just put that episode on both feeds. So if they've got a podcast, you've got a podcast, you put it on both and you mention both shows and it cross-pollinates the audience. And one little hack actually you can do is to chop it in half, and actually you've got a part one, a part two. Part one goes on their feed, part two goes on your feed. And that really does, encourage the cross-pollination between the two. So there's different formats like that can work really nicely.
Yep. We've done those a few times and we enjoy them. And it's a great way to, and then maybe onto another topic and how is an incredible medium. The fact that you can borrow audiences, right? And you can swap audiences with other podcasters in adjacent fields, or, if I have a podcast, you have a podcast, but we're in the same field. And like you said, cross-pollination, there's people in your audience who could benefit from listening to us. And there's people in my audience who could benefit from listening to you. Why don't we collaborate and do something that's a major benefit to both of our audiences? And then now people in your audience who had never heard of me, and vice versa in our audience who've never heard of you, now we're helping them by giving them even more resources than just one person, right? Like I feel like that's the coolest thing about podcasting is everybody's about abundance. It's not about like hoarding your audience and making sure nobody has access to it. It's like, no, let's all be in cahoots. Let's all share audiences. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's totally because we can make better content together, can't we? Like it's about conversations. It's about collaborations. It's about conversations. So there was actually the phrase you used there, the borrow somebody else's audience, struck a memory in my head. Like one time, about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a show I listened to a lot, and it was a really big show actually in my area. I really enjoyed it. I interacted with the host quite a lot, so I sent him feedback, and he got to know me a little bit. And I think I interviewed him on my show actually, which is probably what kind of sparked that start of that proper relationship. But it became a time when he was actually going to take a break, and he mentioned in a show that I'm going to take a month break. I'll be back again in 4 weeks. And I just sent him an email and said, "Do you want 2 or 3 episodes that you could fill that gap with? I think I could cover this topic that would be really interesting to your audience." And he said, "Well, send them over." And so I did. I recorded them. They would have been useful for my show anyway, so it wasn't really I wasn't going to lose out here. It wasn't a waste of time. But he was like, "Yeah, these are great." And he popped them on his feed. And then suddenly I became a host for his show for 3 weeks, essentially. But it came about because, I had developed this relationship. I'd listened to his show. I'd got him on. Probably even just the interview itself would have been enough, actually. So you can develop that kind of relationship so well through podcasting.
Yeah, it's incredible. The possibilities with podcasting are endless. And I think even if you feel like you're a nobody, or, you don't have much of an audience, having a podcast is just an excellent tool to have in your belt, provided you have the time and the capability and the desire to do it. But it's also one of those things where you have a platform. And like you said earlier, it doesn't matter if you have 2 people listening or 200 or 2,000 or 200,000. If you've got the audience that likes what you're putting out there and they enjoy listening to you, even if you have 50 people listening, but they're people who are either could be buyers of what you do, or they just are really into what you're doing and your goal is listenership, it's a good number, right? Everybody starts at 0, and you might have a podcast that never exceeds 800 downloads in a month. But if 800 of those people, if 600 of them are super engaged and 400 of them join your membership or they buy your product, or it doesn't matter. Like the listenership doesn't matter so long as it fits in what your goals are.
It's like such a valuable point, and such a power of podcasting is that exactly that. Like we've seen people run really successful businesses around a podcast with just 50 or 100 listeners, because one podcast listener is worth like 1,000 YouTube watchers or 10,000 blog readers or probably 1 million social media followers in terms of how much they're likely to take action, how much they're bought into what you do, how much they trust you as the host. So if you have 100 listeners, you're absolutely right. Like you said, 800 and 400 there, you can convert like half of your listeners into consumers of what you do. So if you're a coach, you do $2,000 a month coaching program, you need, 20 people, and you're actually like doing really, really well. So yeah, it's amazing that engagement, that trust that can convert so many of those listeners. It's like, it's invaluable.
And it's hard to duplicate the authority, the implied authority and the actual authority that you have when you are the one behind the mic, right? There's just something about it. It's the same as, in the old days and in the current days when someone's on the radio, if they're being interviewed by the local radio DJ, oh, my brain is like, well, this person's an expert. He wouldn't be on the radio right now if he wasn't the expert. It's the same. Our brains do the same thing with a podcast. I feel like it's like, oh, you own a podcast. Okay, you run a podcast. That's amazing. Very cool. Wow. So you're just automatically the authority in whatever it is you're talking about because you're the one behind the mic. It's hard to match that in any other medium.
Yeah. And I think even more so, it's the attention that you get through it too, because you have the platform. So you've got a little bit of a halo effect around it in the first place there. But then people give you more time, more attention on podcasting than anything else. So, I mean, like, how often do you see people watching like a 3-hour YouTube video or something like that and just watching it every single minute? Whereas people are out there listening to 3-hour podcast episodes, like every single minute of it wrapped to it, because it's something to do while, you're busy. It's something to do while you're washing the car, while you're cooking your dinner, while you're walking the dog, while you're at the gym, something like that. So you want something, you're craving something to engage you. And so people give you so much attention. So that attention multiplied by the platform you have, multiplied by the knowledge you're sharing as well, all of that is what turns into that fanatical trust that builds, that really shows people you're not just there for no reason. Actually, you've shared like 10 hours worth of knowledge, 10 hours worth of value with me over the last, few weeks. So therefore I trust you. So yeah, it's amazing.
Well, it's funny how the people who give it all away for free, quote unquote, give it all away, give out the farm for free on their podcast, they seem to do the best when it comes to people actually buying their product or service, right? Because you're so willing to be open with it. And we all know there's only a certain amount of people who are going to take action on whatever it is you're talking about. But at the end of the day, a lot of them are still going to come to you and purchase your product or service because you're the one talking all about it. You are now the master authority in what you're talking about. And as someone who might want that service, I know that I'm not going to do this myself, but I sure know you're the expert because I've listened to 100 of your podcasts and you are the expert. I am so much more likely to buy from you and become a customer just because of the authority you espoused on your podcast.
Yeah, that's totally it. Yeah. And I think that's going to become more and more important in the next few years. As information alone is completely degraded, devalued. Who's going to pay for a course in 2 or 3 years' time when you can just open up ChatGPT and say, create me a course on this very specific little subject? I just don't think that's going to be around for much longer. But what will be around is people still seeking that information, whether it's through ChatGPT, whether it's through podcasts, whatever it be, they'll get their information for free. It's the implementation that they're actually going to pay for. And that's what actually humans help with. It's the accountability, it's the getting the little tips when something goes wrong. It's just getting encouragement, when you need it, when you're at a low or something like that. So yeah, if you've built that trust, you've built that authority, that awareness that the subject through this free content, then you charge for the implementation on the other end.
What's the one question that people don't ask you or that you wish they would ask you about podcasting?
The one thing that matters probably more than anything else that hardly anyone puts enough thought into is, how do I make my podcast more unique? How do I make it stand out? People often just create a show and they think of a topic they can talk about. Maybe it's, let's say, health and fitness. So I'm into going to the gym. So I'm going to talk about fitness on a podcast. And yeah, that's a good topic to talk about. People are interested in listening to shows about that. But there's also 50 other shows about general fitness. So how are you going to make it unique? How are you going to make it stand out? And there's a whole bunch of ways you can do that. You can take an angle on it. Maybe it's fitness for 50-year-olds. Maybe it's fitness for kids. Maybe it's fitness for, a certain type of, background or something like that. Or maybe it's something to do with your experience. Maybe it's like fitness for people who are people who are overweight right now. And the reason I'm doing that is because I used to be 50 stone and I managed to lose 20 stone or something like that, So it's based on your experience, your background as well. So there's a couple of ways there that you can bring it in. But then there's a bunch of other as well. Like you've got formats, you make it short and daily or long and monthly. You make it like 4 or 5 different segments, a variety show, that kind of thing. You make it a round table with 5 different guests every single time, or you make it really highly produced. Like you go out and talk to 5 people and you actually come back and bring it into a conversation. So there's so many different ways to do it, but it's the part that people usually forget about. And all they do is then just pick their topic and just start interviewing people, and that's it.
Do you usually coach or recommend to people to make it an interview-based show, or is it easier to have it be kind of like a monologue where if I'm the fitness expert and it's just going to be 15, 20 minutes of me talking about a specific topic, is one better than the other?
The cool thing is they can all work, but they have to suit your own skills, certainly, and what time you have available too. Like, do you find interviewing easy, Brien?
I do, yeah.
You do, yeah. So you're probably natural at this, but there's a lot of people don't. And there's a lot of people actually think that they're good at, but only realize that interviewing is a much bigger skill than they thought, like 20 episodes in. And
I'll tell you, when I first started, man, I was terrible.
Yes.
It is a learning curve for sure.
Absolutely. So everyone thinks like interviews are just the easy option because you just bring on another expert and then they create the actual value. But they don't realize that interviewers like yourself, it takes a lot of time to learn it. There's a lot of skill to learn there, a lot of ways to get better at it. So it can work well, but you need to actually put the work in to make it work nicely. Often an easier starting point for people is solo because you have full control over the content. There's no logistics around bringing people on your show. You put yourself front and center as well. Like you actually do showcase yourself more effectively than you would in an interview. And it's quick as well. It's so much quicker to do because you have so much control over that and it's generally shorter. But the trouble is that it can be harder to make an engaging monologue because it's just your voice, just droning on. It's possible. It's definitely possible. But have you tried much in the way of solo recording yourself?
No, I've never really done much solo. I've always, as the host of this show, done interview based, and I'm very much a people person, so I like having the ability to vamp and reverb off of people on the other end and just have a general conversation. Sometimes I think people get tired of just hearing my own voice, but I definitely see the value in it, especially if you're just starting out. You got to build that muscle memory, right? You got to be used to being in front of the mic. You got to be able to speak upon what you're talking about. And, that might be easier for some than others. If you've been an expert in your area or whatever your topic is for a long time, it might be much easier than if, let's say you recently started a marketing agency and you're a year into it, but you're by no means the foremost expert, but you're learning as you go. It might be a little bit harder to start a podcast and talk about it. But I find that whether I'm talking to myself or talking, especially with others on the other end, that's one of the best ways to learn is either by teaching or by talking, right? The more you talk about it, the more you put your knowledge out there and then get feedback and whether it gets corrected or you just continue to grow. Right. So there's definitely a ton of value in both avenues.
Yeah, that's such a good avenue to creating a podcast, actually, is that kind of learn along with me. Like it's one of the big, let's talk about questions people do ask a lot. It's, am I expert enough to do this? Like, why would anyone listen to me? It doesn't matter. Like some of the best podcasts out there are somebody who's a complete beginner and therefore the listener utterly identifies with this person because they're the same person. And they're just talking about their journey. They're saying, this is what I tried this week. This is what completely screwed up, but this is what worked. And, that can be the most interesting thing to follow along with. And the other side of that as well, like we're talking about formats, actually, if you're somebody out there that doesn't necessarily like solo, but you do want more control over the content, you do want more consistency, a good alternative is co-hosting. So if you can find another person to do it with, that brings in the conversation, it brings in the chemistry. If you have 2 people that get on well, then there's rarely a better type of podcast because those 2 people, you as a listener, both people. So you actually have 2 people to connect with, but they connect with each other. So it's almost like you feel like you're in a conversation with friends because they are getting on so well. You're kind of involved in that too. There's in-jokes that go back and forth every single episode. That can be a really good way to go about it. And it takes away a lot of the, finding a new interviewee every single week logistics. It means that you can plan out episodes really carefully to make sure they're nice and tight, they're very value-packed, all of that kind of stuff. So a co-hosted type show can be a great format.
Yeah, well, and I could even see a format where, let's say I'm just going to use one of my backgrounds because I first started in marketing. I learned how to run Facebook ads for small businesses and lead generation. I could see someone running a podcast where it's a solo podcast and you just do 10 or 15-minute episodes and maybe you drop one a day. And it's just literally talking about one aspect of how to run a Facebook ad or how to manage your agency or how to handle a client. And literally just have these little action-packed nuggets, but start using that to promote a coaching membership, right? As opposed to a course where I think that's the video courses are kind of on the outs, right? At least it seems that way. Or we talked about how the future of them are going to be rocky, but I could see this being where here's the content. It's incredibly valuable. If you are a self-starter, you can take this audio and go run with it and start your own thing. Or if you want more help, hey, by the way, I run a membership. I coach you on this. Then we get actual in-depth and sky's the limit, right? So so many little ideas like this. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's the way we're going with our membership. Do you run a coaching membership or anything like that, Brien?
I'm a coach in a membership group, yes. It's not my own, but I've been a coach in there for years now.
Oh, nice. Okay. I don't know what your experience is with this, but I'm finding definitely we're moving away from courses, we're moving away from information, that kind of stuff. And it's much more these days, people joining memberships for not only that, so I talked about implementation, certainly that's a part of it, but actually the thing I'm looking at is productizing almost those services. So we help people make a successful podcast. We can coach you on any question you have. And then taking that and actually breaking it down into really what are the problems you're solving here though? So like one of the most common growth things that one of the most common things people would ask us in our membership is, here's a new episode I'm coming up with. Here's a title. What do you think? Is this title good? And we're like, oh no, yeah, it's decent, but you could change this, you could change that, you could change this. And so we've turned that into a product, which is our title clinic. So Click Catalyzer, we call it, the title clinic. And it's just the same thing as it was before, as in people are asking us for feedback on a title, but it's suddenly something you can promote as a individual service I still haven't got a word for what to call these. Like it's a productized service in a way, but it's a thing, it's an object inside this membership that is all about solving one of their problems in a human way. So it's human feedback. And therefore, that's something that just adds a lot of value. And I think the more you can break down those problems into little products that you can add to the membership that are based on action, that are based on feedback, things like that, the better. That's what is adding value to memberships these days, I think. I don't know, is that the experience you're having?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's basically productizing the service. And there's a guy I know that does this really well. But I think that's the future. And people are starting to realize that this is something we can easily do and package it. And then it's another thing that someone can do on their own, but they might have the option to buy into the coaching. But if I can productize this, sell it one time or sell it multiple times over and over again, but build it once, that's such an unlock for so many business owners.
And people, yeah, totally. Maybe it's like a productized microservice, something like that. I'll come up with a name for it. But it's, when you add that format, when you add a template, you add something that makes it really easy for people to ask a question. Suddenly you get lots more people doing it. And while you might think, like, I'm running a membership, I don't want loads of people asking me loads of stuff all the time. It is a good thing because it means that people are getting value and they'll stick around for longer. They'll get more success. Yep. They'll talk about it to other people. So you actually do want people using these more. And the benefit for me is that because we've templatized these ways of getting help and ways of getting feedback, it actually makes it easier for us to give the feedback as well, for us to give the help, because the person gives us such detailed info on it. We're not having to go back and say, oh, but so what's this podcast about then? And what's the goal of the episode? And we've put that in the template. So we can really quickly read through this template. We can really quickly give some feedback, and they've got a ton of value in just literally seconds. So I'm loving that kind of approach to it. It just makes it so easy for them to take part that our members love it.
Absolutely. Well, Colin, I should probably start to land the plane here. This has been wonderful. You've brought so much information and knowledge to MU listeners here today. I think this has been fantastic. Before I let you go, I do want to make sure that anybody out there listening today, if they want to check out Alitu or they want to learn more from you, get involved with Colin in some fashion, what are the best ways to do so?
Yeah, thank you. It's been great to come on. Always good to talk podcasting. So yeah, I mean, the most obvious way you can find us is over at thepodcasthost.com. That's our main site, thepodcasthost.com. You can find our academy and our education on there too. And I made up a little link tree recently. It's just my name, colingray.link, which has a link to like my email courses, newsletter. It's got a link to Alitu on there. It's got a link to our academy, all of those things. So yeah, it's just colingray.link. So that'll take you there.
All right, wonderful. Well, Colin, thank you so much again, man. This has been wonderful, and best of luck to you the rest of this year with Alitu.
Same to you, Brien. Thanks for having me on.